Have you ever wanted to play in a magic school setting without potentially problematic overtones? Do you like the Magic School Bus, Little Witch Academia, and other incredibly popular magic school genre media? Me too. So when I picked this game up at Gen Con last year, I dove headfirst into an adorable system with great themes, simple gameplay, and big fun. So gather up your wands, your familiars, and your spellbooks, and join me as we take a look at Kids on Brooms. Hey nerds! My name is Atlas and I really like role-playing games. On this channel, I talk about tabletop role-playing games that are alternatives to Dungeons & Dragons. There are so many great games out there just begging for you to play them. Kids on Brooms from Renegade Game Studios is a super fun and thrilling role-playing game that uses the same rules and framework as Kids on Bikes. It's a rules-light, story-driven game filled with magical beasts, spells, potions, and a fantastical school with hidden secrets. Designed by Jonathan Gilmour, Doug Lewandowski, and Spencer Stark, and beautifully illustrated by Heather Vaughn, Kids on Brooms was released in 2020 as a magical spin-off of Kids on Bikes, which released in 2017. Kids on Bikes has been featured on big-name actual play productions like Dimension 20 several times. It's a great system that deserves so much love, and Kids on Brooms is no different. For more Kids on Bikes spin-offs, they also have Teens in Space for you sci-fi lovers out there. And for those of you who like superheroes and comic books, Kids in Capes is available for pre-order at the time of me making this video. These games are big on collaboration. They are small books, big stories. The creators want you to build your stories together. They are about everyone, not just the game master, creating the world together. Players come up with things like their favorite local hangout spot around town, juicy rumors about the teachers and fellow students, the history of the school, local legends, and more. This isn't just the GM's job. Think of it like a group project in school. Every person is responsible for a part of it, and the GM just organizes the notes. In the beginning of the book, it very literally says each player shares a piece of the school's history. Each player shares a rumor, discuss what overtones and undertones it should have. That all happens as a collective group. There's nothing wrong with having a GM handle everything, but where's the fun in that? There are certain aspects that the designers suggest for you to consider having in your game, but there's nothing in the rules saying that you have to use them. Ideally, your setting should take place in a school or some kind of learning facility. It should have some kind of secret to unlock, a dark history, a famous legend, maybe a celebrity alumnus. Who knows? All of these things are for you to decide and explore together. So let's get into character creation. Just like every other role-playing game, you're going to want to come up with your character. Who are they? What brought them to this school? The creators want you to have as much fun with this as you can. So even if there's something that you would like to do with your character that might not be listed in the book, just work with your GM and find something that's unique to you and how you play. We start with tropes. Tropes are your personality. What kind of person do you want to be? Maybe a shining star student teacher's pet? Maybe a withdrawn bookworm that kind of keeps to themselves? Maybe you have ambitions of becoming a great mage one day and aren't afraid to step on a few toes or hurt a few feelings on your way to the top. These tropes will help you decide which stats to take, but you don't have to stick to them rigidly if you don't want to. If you and your GM decide that you would rather have this stat be higher than that one, that's definitely something that you both can agree to change. In Kids on Brooms and Kids on Bikes, the dice system works a bit differently than your traditional D20 system. Instead of using one D20 to roll everything and then adding your modifier to it, each of your stats corresponds to a specific die type. They use all 6 of the main dice from your D4 to your D20, not including the percentile die. Your trope will help you decide which die to use for which stat. For example, say you like the golden child trope. For this, you'll put your highest stat as your brains and your lowest stat as your flight. The 6 stats are your brains, your book smarts, brawn, your brute strength, fight, this is your weapon and fighting skills, flight, this is how fast you are, both mentally and physically, charm, this is how socially adept you are, and grit, this is how hard it is to break you physically or emotionally. I'll get into how to use these stats here in a second. Now to look at grades. When creating your character, you'll choose which grade you're in. You can play as an underclass student, which is typically about age 14 and below, like middle school age. You can choose to be an upper class student, This is like high school to early college age, like 15 to 20. Or you can be a faculty, which is ages 21 and up. Work with your GM to figure out what will make sense for the campaign or adventure you'll be playing. You don't all have to be the same age at all. There can be a mix. Depending on your age and grade, these will determine your ability boosts. Upper class students will automatically become trained in a specific trait of their choice when casting their magic, as well as receiving bonuses to their fight and brawn skills, because teenagers are stubborn and cocky. Underclass students get a bonus to their charm and flight checks, because kids are cute and good at running away. They also receive the innocence strength. Faculty received the studied trait for a skill of their choice, and they get a bonus for their brains and grit checks, because they've seen some stuff. Students should write down what their favorite class is and the name of the professor who teaches that class. Faculty should write down the class that they teach and who the best student is in that class. It's totally okay to be the teacher's pet in this game. Once you have your trope, it will also tell you what strengths and flaws to choose. Strengths are mechanical advantages that will help with gameplay. Flaws are not mechanical and won't necessarily hurt you, but they will add for good gameplay and fun role-playing for your character. Once you have all these attributes figured out, come up with a name for your character and you're ready to go. Let's get into magic. In Kids on Brooms, magic, obviously, plays a big part in the gameplay and always follows two rules. 1, it reflects your personality and your intent. 2, if you use it dangerously or maliciously, it can and likely will have dangerous consequences. Your magic stats are the same as your physical stats, but they just have a different way to use them. It's still fight, brains, brawn, flight, grit, and charm. For fight, this is typically your skill in battle or while dueling. It's what you use for your attack specifically. Flight is typically what you will use for your defense. Spells for hiding, using your broom to navigate, and deflecting dangerous magic all come from your flight skill. Brains is used when you want to understand something mysterious, when you want to reveal something, or for astral projection. Your brawn skill is used when you want to keep something protected or while moving something, like with levitation. It's literally like if your magic had muscles. Your charm stat is what you use when you want to influence somebody's mind, disguising yourself, influencing someone else's emotions, or casting illusions from your own mind. Grit is for when you want to keep yourself or someone else safe mentally. This keeps someone from peering into your mind, but also what you will use if you want to dispel magic or heal someone. Now let's get into your equipment. Let's talk about your wands.
The wand chooses the wizard, Mr. Potter.
Something that I think is really cool about this system that not a lot of other systems do is that they take something mechanical, tangible, like your wand and your broom, and make it affect your skills. So when you choose your wand, you will choose your wood and your core, and those two things will give you a +1 bonus to a chosen skill. For example, you can have a hawthorn wand with a hawk's feather core, so you get a bonus to both brains and flight. Or you can have an oak wand with a dragon heartstring core for both brawn and fight. There are several different combinations for you to choose from. Brooms work the same way. You gotta have a broom to get around, so why not choose one that's customized for you? Each choice of broom gives the player a boost as long as they are riding it. The Mastermind Sweeper gives you a +1 to your brains check. The Daredevil's Duster gives you a boost to charm when you perform a cool stunt. And the cute thing about Kids on Brooms is that they really want you to have a good story that goes along with everything. How did you get your broom? Was it a gift? Was it a hand-me-down? Did you buy it brand new when you found out you were accepted into magic school? How did you feel when your wand chose you? Do you come from a magical lineage going back centuries? Or was all of this a surprise when you got your acceptance letter into magic school? And now for our furry friends.
They're so cute.
Your familiar is another great way to show off your personality. You'll find that that's a common concept in this game. It's all about who you are, your personality, your character development. The world and everything else comes secondary. The world doesn't tell a story, you do. And your wand, your broom, your familiar, they help anchor your personality into yourself and tell your GM and fellow players who you are as a character. You can have any animal as a familiar as long as your GM is okay with it. But please remain realistic. This is a school for children, and while magical only has so much space. Small animals like dogs, cats, rats, frogs, birds, even fish are great because they're built for domestic living. Grizzly bears, giraffes, and tiger sharks, not so much. Also, keep in mind how many situations in which your familiar would be able to help you. Your familiar can carry out simple tasks for you, but most have their limits. A dog might be able to bury something for you, and an owl could deliver a message, but it's probably not going to be very easy for your cat to retrieve something at the bottom of a lake. But then again, who knows? You might work with your GM and find out that they have a whole equestrian center, but instead of horses, it's unicorns and griffins. You may want to get really creative. Your school may have a rule where they only allow magical animals, giving you the opportunity to get really creative with your GM and come up with fantastical beasts all from your own mind.
Really?
It's all about you and your GM and your fellow players and all how you all want to collaboratively run the game. And speaking of you and your friends, let's get into relationships. Kids on Brooms, just like Kids on Bikes, if you haven't figured it out yet, is big on collaboration. Your relationships with your fellow players matter. However, it is totally normal, especially at the beginning of the adventure, to not know everyone super well. But hopefully there should be something that connects all of you. Maybe Brian, the upper class student with the cherrywood wand, is the tutor to Liam, the underclass first year who may need extra help with potions, who our other character, Professor Brown, teaches. Rule number 1 about being a wizard is that wizards are always learning.
Wow! Nice segue.
So even if you aren't attending classes as a student, even faculty have to keep their minds and instincts sharp. Players can choose 3 classes to study during their year at Magic School. For storytelling purposes, unless something specific happens during a class, you just go under the assumption that learning took place. And you can take marks in those classes based on the gameplay that happened during that session. You can take 2 marks in your classes, and depending on what you did that session, using a potion, flying a broom, casting certain spells, you can apply that knowledge and that experience to your classes. Once you earn so many marks in a class, you can use that training to get bonuses. 2 marks in a specific subject, you're trained, so you get a +1. 6 marks will get you studied for a +2, and 10 marks will get you a +3 at the mastered level. So you have your character, you have your stats, you have your stuff. Let's get into playing the game. For stat checks and lucky breaks, as I said before, each die type is associated with a specific statistic or stat. Your D20 means that is your best skill. You are amazing and superb at this particular skill. D12, you're still pretty damn good. D10 is good, it's above average. Your D8 isn't stellar, slightly below average, but not your worst skill. D6, you're not the best at this. You're pretty bad at it. And your D4, you might want to let someone else give that one a try. Most skill checks average around an 8 or so, which, yeah, is a pretty easy number to hit for a 12 and a 20, but you'll have to do a lot of extra stuff to be able to hit an 8 with a D4. The good news about this is that there is a mechanic called your lucky break. Basically, when you roll your die, if you roll the max number on your die, you get to roll again and add that result to the first one. This applies when the target number is above the dice's capability. So again, let's use that 8 target number. I roll a d4, I get a 4. Well then, I get a lucky break and I get to roll again. And I get another 4. That means I meet the target DC, so I stop rolling. Even though I hit the max number on that roll, it doesn't matter. I hit the number and that's where we stop. Now let's say the target number is 8 and I roll with a d8, I get an 8. That still meets the target number. I don't need to keep going, even though I did get a lucky break, essentially. There are 2 kinds of skill checks in this game: planned actions and snap decisions. Planned actions allow you to take your time and sit back and really think about the course of action that you want to take. Or it allows you to work on it with your friends. Working on a difficult problem or maybe performing some kind of minor heist would be a planned action. Snap decisions are made on the fly, usually under bad conditions, and are often chaotic and unpredictable. The book gives the example of being chased across campus by a dragon, or trying to lie to a teacher as a snap decision. No time for planning or thinking, just do it. There are a few steps to making these skill checks. First, your GM will set the difficulty level. Next, you will either roll the appropriate die, or you can choose to take half the die's value. Like, if it's a target number of 8 and you're rolling with a d20, you can just choose to take a 10 and beat the target number. Keep in mind, that only applies when it's a planned action. That's when you have time to plan your action. If you roll a die that is less in value than the target DC, like the previous D4 for an 8 situation, and you roll your max number, you get your lucky break and roll again. Once you determine whether or not there's a lucky break, you add your age bonus to that roll. Magic bonuses don't apply here, by the way. Once that's decided, you can discard any adversity tokens to add a +1 to the roll. Your friends can also add their own adversity tokens here to help you out if they so choose. Once you add all of these up, if they meet or beat the target number, you succeed. If it's still not enough after all of that, you fail. And when you fail, you can receive an adversity token to be used later for situations like these. When it's a snap decision, you cannot take half the die, you have to roll it. On these rolls, you can still use your adversity tokens, but your friends can no longer help you. This is all you. You don't have time to collaborate. If you fail, you still get adversity tokens though. You can also work together with your GM to narrate these successes and failures appropriately. In some cases, there may be dire consequences for a failure, as well as potential rewards for success. In either case, everything should always be pushing the story forward. A failure doesn't mean the game goes off the rails. It just means that that particular thing that you tried to do didn't happen the way you wanted it to. The story keeps going, just maybe in a different direction. This brings us to touch a little bit on fears. During character creation, you have to select at least one fear. It can be something tangible like snakes, spiders, or dragons, or it can be something abstract like disappointing your parents, or someone discovering your long-kept secret. When facing a fear, all of your rolls are snap decisions. You're playing against anxiety and adrenaline here. There's no calmly planning things out. You cannot spend adversity tokens to help your friends, and depending on how severe the fear is, you could be taking up to a -3 penalty to your rolls. The good news is that you can still spend your adversity tokens on yourself, and your friends can spend theirs to help you, assuming they don't also suffer from the same fear.
Ridiculous.
Let's look at spell checks. In games like D&D, Magic has somewhat strict rules. For most classes, you only have a set number of spells available to you. You have to prepare them every day, and once you use up your spell slots, that's all you can do. You're down to using cantrips or nothing. Kids on Brooms takes a different approach to magic. Their thoughts are, magic is everywhere, so if something can be done with magic, chances are you can do whatever that thing is with magic. So basically, here's how your spell checks work. 1, tell the GM what your plan is. 2, the GM will then decide what kind of magic to use for that and set the difficulty level. You roll your stat die for that type of magic, plus a D4 for your magic die, which you will roll anytime you use magic. 4, you narrate the success of your spell, or your GM narrates your failure. They take fantasy realism somewhat seriously in this game. The designers make it clear that there are real and sometimes scary consequences to using magic. You are literally warping reality in one way or another, and the universe does not always like that sort of thing. So when magic is left unchecked, or if risks are taken, sometimes bad things happen. Because of this, it is vital that the GM tell you all of the factors before you make your decision on whether or not you want to go through with the spell that you're about to perform. Now, GMs take note. Just because you get to set the difficulty and the result of a failure, it does not give you free rein to make things unfair for your players. You should try to make it make sense in a realistic setting, as, realistic as casting spells may be. In order to help GMs decide the parameters for difficulty, effect, and more, there are several tables to consult when resolving a magic roll. There is also an entire section for what happens when you use magic on another living being. Be very careful doing this though. Casting magic on unwilling targets, especially if the spell would do them harm, is a crime. Safety rules are huge in this game, and the creators of it reiterate many times throughout the book how serious an offense it is to mess with someone else's character without that player's consent. That being said, there will be times when you have to cast offensive and defensive spells against either NPCs, monsters, or even sometimes other players, if the two players have agreed. And that brings us to combat. First and foremost, combat in Kids on Brooms works pretty much like any other system. Roll to hit a target number. If it meets it or beats it, you succeed. And there is always more than one way to solve a fight. Physical damage versus magical damage. Sometimes wands just won't do it and you just really need to punch something. When using physical damage, like from hand-to-hand combat, the attacker will use their fight skill against the defender's grit skill if they're planning on fighting back, or their flight skill if they're planning on running away or dodging the attack. When wands come out, things can get unpredictable and even deadly very quickly. That is why unsupervised dueling is against school rules and will often lead to expulsion. Keep in mind, the creators of this game don't expect you to pull punches, and friendly fire is definitely a thing. Always keep safety and consent in mind though. If two players don't agree to combat, the story will have to move on in a different direction. So how do we deal with injuries and death? Here's something you're probably not used to. In Kids on Brooms, you don't have hit points. That's not to say you can't take damage, you absolutely can and will. The difference in this game is that narrative purpose matters. Instead of going round after round, one turn at a time, the attacker and the defender make their applicable rolls, and then they, along with the GM, will narrate the result. There is a chart in this chapter that allows you to figure out just how injured you are depending on the dice rolls. It could have missed you entirely or been barely enough to matter, or it can escalate all the way up to death or near death to the point where immediate medical attention is necessary and still might not work, and even if it does, there's going to be permanent side effects. Potions. Potions are great because this is your way of preparing spells, like you would in other tabletop games. You tell the GM what you would like to do and what potion components you have and or need for the potion. You'll also tell them how long you want the potion to last for, and then the GM will come up with a target number that fits the potency and the duration difficulty. You will roll your dice as if it's a snap decision and see if your potion succeeds. Alternatively, if you've done this potion multiple times, if you have a written recipe, or if you've attended a potions class where you learned how to craft this recipe, the GM may allow you to take it as a planned action instead of a snap decision. So you will have the added benefit of being able to use adversity tokens if necessary. There are a couple of other factors that go into physically using the potions, such as throwing them or sneaking them into someone's drink, that you'll need to go over with your GM to see how successful you would be at that. Communication with your GM is key in all aspects, but especially when any kind of outcome achievement is necessary. And speaking of GMs, there is a whole section for our game runners out there. Keep in mind that above all else, this is a collaborative game. Your players will create the school with you, and you will all together figure out monsters and rumors and legends and history all together as a group. There was a quote I heard recently. I don't recall who said it, or if I'm even quoting it correctly, but it said, "We are all writing the story, I just turned the page." And I like that. I think that is incredibly fitting for most RPGs, but this one specifically. So many games today rely solely on the GM to create everything for their players. And I don't necessarily think that that was designed that way. I think we've fallen into the status quo of that being the way things are. However, the Kids on Bikes franchise is very adamant that you all build the world together. This may not be their reasoning, but personally for me, I believe that if you have a hand in building something and creating something, chances are you'll probably be more invested in it and stick around and pay attention to the story and how it unfolds around you. I want to read something from the book that deals with player failure. When a character fails a skill check, both you and your players are bound in your decisions by an unaltered truth. That character failed the skill check. As a GM, you can take some small liberties with the harshness of the penalties for failure, and the character's player can spend adversity tokens to the same end. But unless the player has enough adversity tokens to get over the needed value, the character has failed. Go with it. Take the story in unexpected directions when the most intimidating wizard at the table brandishes their wand threateningly at a small child, and the child laughs at them. Think about why that is, and ask the player to explain. Maybe they try to pull their wand from their robe quickly and it gets caught in the folds and falls to the ground. Maybe the child is distracted by the large stain on the character's pants from when they fell earlier. Players will surprise you with your creativity within these bounds. I think this is so important as a GM myself. So often we think that the story only progresses when we get our desired outcome.
Wait a minute, I'm not supposed to lose. Let me see the script.
And sometimes that's just not true. Sometimes you're not strong enough to defeat the dragon. Sometimes that bully is bigger than you, and standing up to them is only going to get you a black eye. Sometimes you get your heart broken. It's part of life. It's part of gaming. It's part of storytelling. And it's honestly what makes such a glorious and epic moment when you succeed, because you know the sting of that failure. One important thing, arguably the most important thing, about this game and tabletop role-playing games in general is making sure that every player and the GM feels safe, included, and respected. There's a good chunk of this book that talks about safety rules and boundaries and checking in with each other, making sure everyone is comfortable with everything. Since this game relies a lot on the relationships between the characters, there is an aspect of this game, totally optional by the way, that can potentially deal with romantic and even physical relationship, if you so choose. And since that is an aspect, boundaries and respect are very important, and the designers are extremely adamant about that. This game is a great game for people who like roleplay and magic and fantasy. It's super fun and lighthearted with lots of room for creating and running your own adventure. It's got all the fun and fantastical whimsy of your favorite magic school stories while not sacrificing action and epic combat in the process. I really think that if you like stories like Harry Potter, The Magicians, Amari, or Witch Hat Atelier, then you will have a great time with Kids on Brooms. And that is it for me, my friends. Thank you so much for making it to the end of another video. If you liked it and you want to keep hanging out and learning about alternative and independent TTRPGs, please feel free to like the subscribe bell and feel free to hit me up on any of my socials. All of that information is listed in the description box. You know how YouTube works. Thank you again, my friends, and until next time, I'll see you later. Play more games. Bye, nerds.